I've got a pretty big problem here. Ugh.
Hey folks, Alan MandicReally here, and welcome to Mandic Lab 1.0, the Portland, Oregon studio. Now, mind you, this is definitely the alpha release version of the studio. We've got a lot of lessons learned from the Philadelphia space we're going to be applying to this space to turn it into my ultimate YouTuber 3D printing makerspace where we can do some seriously fun and bigger projects in the future. That said, there's a lot of steps between here and there, so we're going to have a whole series of videos building this space out into a cyberpunk sci-fi themed workshop. Since I am a content creator making videos on the internet, one of my primary concerns with this space is a solid network setup. And that's where that server rack, this video, and our friends Ubiquiti, who are not the sponsors of this video. This video does have a sponsor, that's brilliant.org, more on that in a little bit. But they did send over all this hardware to ensure that this Lab 1.0 is going to be properly set up from the get-go. We're going to have the connectivity we need for all of the computers, the streaming hardware, the 3D printers, and other technology in this space, along with security for cyber threats and real-world threats with this setup. We'll talk about the individual parts as we get to them, so let's get right into installing things, which means we're going to have to head up a ladder to work up here, got to climb down into this crawl space, and we've got to go into the attic in the summertime. Yay! Before we go climbing and diving into all of that mess and IT fun, let's talk about this video's sponsor, Brilliant.org. Folks who fit learning into your daily life effectively and make it truly enjoyable at the same time. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and even AI. With Brilliant, you can build real knowledge in just minutes a day. Their fun and engaging lessons are perfect for turning short breaks into productive learning sessions, helping you grow both personally and professionally. I find for somebody like me with ADD, when I'm trying to learn something new and I want to expand my knowledge base, it can be difficult to stay focused when it's not something I'm fixated on. So Brilliant's gamification and their experience points bonuses really keep me engaged with what I'm trying to learn. If you want to learn to analyze sales numbers or demographic information for your business, maybe check out their new data analysis courses. You'll learn to visualize data and make more informed decisions based off of real-world data provided from sources such as Starbucks and Spotify. It's perfect for anyone looking to enhance their data skills in their real life. If you're ready to start expanding your mind and you want to try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days, follow my link, brilliant.org/MandicReally. And if you decide to stick with it, you'll get 20% off of an annual premium subscription using that link. Thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Let's get the network set up in here so I can post this video to the internet. The core concept of this project is pretty simple. Execution, not nearly as such. But that's what this video is about, and we'll get to that. We need to mount the hardware in this server rack, then branch out from here with network cables around the house to various components that need to be hardwired, such as my office needs a line for my video editing computer, Ruby needs one for her computer. Then we also want to have a handful of security cameras inside and outside of the house to protect this place, and wireless access points for Wi-Fi connectivity. Let's start by getting the old hardware out of the way in my rack, so I've got a blank slate. Then we're going to quickly dive into getting the cables run up to the attic. My previous setup in the old studio was not ideal. This is a 2.5 gigabit switch, but clearly it's not rack mountable, so I had to 3D print a mount for it, and it only connected my main computer to my NAS computers mounted in the rack. Everything else was handled via a series of 1 gigabit switches mounted around the house at various strategic points, and this one in the rack for the 3D printers and such in the studio. Out with the old means time for in with the new. The first thing that's going in is the UCI from Ubiquiti. This is their cable modem, effectively, to connect my network to my Xfinity cable internet that I have here. 1200 megabit down and only 40 megabit up. Unfortunately, I can't get fiber like I had in Philadelphia here, so I bought this modem myself to go with this setup, hoping that it would be a more stable connection than the cheap modem that I probably would have been provided by Comcast. I should also be able to monitor traffic and control the modem through the UnifiOS, Ubiquiti's operating system, which if you're not familiar with it, I think it's the star of their ecosystem. It really makes managing and controlling your network beautiful. Now that's going to run on this box. That is the Dream Machine Pro, which is kind of the Swiss Army knife of the network here. It's going to run the operating system. It's also a network video recorder for the cameras that we're going to be running, and it also functions as a switch if you only need a couple of ports on your network. However, we need a few more, which is where this box comes in. Inside of here is the new 24-port switch that Ubiquiti sent over to go with this entire setup. It is their new Pro Max POE switch. There's a lot of fun features on this thing that we're going to see in a minute here, but the star of the show is probably 8 ports of 2.5 gig Ethernet, along with all 24 ports being PoE power delivery. 16 of them are PoE++, and 8 of them are just regular PoE+. Perfect-ish. With the network hardware mounted in the rack, it's time for the fun task of running the cables from here throughout the house. Now, I have 3 zones that I want to address with varying difficulty levels. The studio here is the easiest. I can surface mount cables on the walls and ceiling. I'm not worried about it. When I'm going for a cyberpunk aesthetic, extra cables run around will probably fit in. First story, I want to have 2 access points on. So that's a little more difficult, but there is a well-maintained crawl space that I can run cables through and up into the walls really pretty easily, and even on a summer day like today, it's really nice and cool down there. The second story is the issue. You see, I have to get cables from here in the garage up to the attic so I can then drop into each of the second story rooms that need networking setup. And that means the longest runs. It means the attic is going to be lovely temperature on a summer day, and there's no clear path from here to there because this is a garage. It is the likeliest place in your home for a fire to start, and as such, all of the walls and ceiling should be fire breaks. So there's no clear path between here and the attic, except for one thing. You know, I was pretty displeased that the air conditioning unit was in the garage when we picked this place, because I'm going to have to contend with the noise of it when I'm filming in here. Luckily today has been pretty cool, so it hasn't kicked on much. But right now, this 12-inch duct that runs from here up to the attic is the clearest path that I have to get up there with cables. So we're going to punch a hole in here and head on up. I might be able to get away with just running those cables up through the ducting. They are going to be shielded network cables, but I don't love that idea as that's also a forced air heat unit. It shouldn't get that hot, but I don't love cooking the network cables inside of a duct. So I'm going to run some 1.25 PVC conduit up through there. That'll shield those cables from the air flowing through there, any static, the temperature changes, and it'll allow me expandability. I know how many wires I want now, but I might want to add some more cables up there later, and this will allow me to pull more cable if I need. I need to measure this conduit to see what size hole I'm going to need to get this in through the duct, which means I can head to my drawer in a toolbox of hole cutting implements and find a 2-inch hole saw, which will be great for this. Then it's as simple as grabbing eye and ear protection, a drill with a step bit in it, and then I can drill in a pilot hole to the duct. Then I can swap on the 2-inch hole saw and start cutting in my hole. But I don't want to go right 90 into this duct because my tube needs to go straight up. So I need to get my hole saw to cut the path that the tube is going to travel. This means I'll start at a little bit of a 90, and then as I start to cut into the duct, I will actually turn the hole saw and the drill to travel that path and cut a bigger chunk out of this duct, which will allow the tube to go how I want. You can see the hole ends up oval shaped because that's what it takes to intersect this duct in that way. This is, of course, only the bottom half of the puzzle. I've got to get up through the duct into the attic, which means I need to cut a hole up at the top too, which I'm going to wait until it's cooler in the morning tomorrow to do that. For you, it's just going to be one quick transition. Okay, best laid plans of mice and men. It is 3:45 p.m. when I got up here, so it's really freaking hot. So as not to prolong my time up here, I'm going to voice over the work I do and just film what I'm doing. Lugging around this camera setup in the attic is proving a whole lot of fun. Okay, to it I go. I started this process by measuring to find the center of the ducting and see how big this box was so I could mark where I wanted to cut. Then... Why? My studio light just overheated. With camera settings adjusted, I set forth to marking and then drilling with a hole saw into the top of this plenum so I could then come through with my favorite Midwest snips and cut out the top of this. That way I'll have access to run cables up and down through this ducting. And unfortunately, the fun continues. My camera is up in the attic. Please excuse this. So once I got the duct open and looked down in there, there's a dog leg. It makes a turn and then another turn to get down into the garage. So I can't feed a straight piece of PVC conduit down through or up from the bottom. So I'm gonna have to do what I didn't wanna do and run the cables themselves through the ducting. I looked it up, the cable that I am using, I found the purchase history. It is riser rated first and foremost, meaning it is meant to go vertically up through a building, and it's also Cat 7 and shielded, so signal integrity should not be an issue due to static or whatever inside of the ductwork. So that's good. Now I just need to decide exactly how many cables I'm running, and I'm not gonna be able to run any more without a fair bit of trouble later. So here we go. To act as a weight to travel down with the fish line, which is paracord in this case, I tied a wrench onto it and then just dropped it down through the ductwork so I can find it down at the bottom and be able to then tie that to my new cables so I can feed them up through the ducting to the attic. Also, not so fun fact, I had to carry this ladder up and down the steps each time I went from the attic to the garage because I only have the one ladder, and these steps are so fun in our new to us McMansion. This is largely where I stopped filming in the attic, but here's the finished product of the cables coming up through the duct. I did use a 45 of conduit to come through so they weren't chafing on any metal as they passed through, and I capped off the top of that box after I cut it up with a new fresh piece of galvanized ductwork. All that was sealed off with some foil tape, so hopefully there won't be any air leaks from this. Please excuse the shadow puppet lighting. This whole video is just one bad lighting setup and a reverb chamber after another. I need to mount this access point so I know where the cables are running to and how long they need to be for this anyway. I think here at the end of the hall, right on the ceiling, is going to be the best spot to get the best antenna coverage of this floor. My office is right over there. The master bedroom is right to the side of the camera. So I think this is the best spot. It's also a shorter run because the duct comes up kind of right in that corner there. So it'll go right out of the duct and then down into this access point. I like that. I wanted the access point to be centered on the hallway. So when you're walking down the hall, it's not in a weird left or right position. So I used some masking tape to put it on the ceiling so I could mark where I wanted to be and not leave pen marks if I needed to change my location or anything like that. Then I used a 3/4 16-inch long installer bit. The reason I used a long bit was so I could then locate it underneath the cotton candy in the attic. With that hole drilled, I could then run the cable through it and mount the access point's mounting plate. I used just some of my favorite drywall anchors for this. It's not a particularly heavy unit, and then it just twists onto the mount after connecting the cable. It occurs to me that I just showed you mounting one of the wireless access points, but I didn't tell you what ones Ubiquiti sent over for this project. These are the new U7 Pro Wi-Fi 7 capable access points. These have not only 2.4 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi bands, but also 6 gigahertz, allowing for significantly higher theoretical speed limits. That's why we needed the Pro Max switch. We needed the 2.5 gigabit ports on it to connect to these APs, which do use that 2.5 gigabit standard for the higher throughput they can handle. These are also capable of handling more clients per device, so I can max out on Raspberry Pis and smart home devices in the house, and I really don't think it's going to be a problem with these as part of my system. This thing's actually so big that the status LED light ring on it actually functions as a bit of a night light in that hallway now, which I'm not upset about. We kind of wanted a night light at the end of that hall, and now we have it. I'm gonna put the second one of these here in the studio because this is gonna be the highest concentration of probably individual smart home devices, Raspberry Pis, 3D printers, and such. but I don't actually own anything that's Wi-Fi 7 or 6 capable at this moment. But I know I have a Wi-Fi 7 capable device coming in real soon that's going to make really good use of this. I did forget to note, the U7 Pros are reverse compatible with Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. I don't have that in my laptop, it's too old, but Ruby's MacBook Pro does have Wi-Fi 6. The other night, unprompted while laying in bed, she commented, "My internet is feeling faster than it ever has before." I said, yeah, the new access point should be getting you a better connection to our internet than you had before. So partner approval factor, big thumbs up. Now you might have noticed I didn't show you how to run the network cables through the wall from the attic to get to my computer in my office, which is hardwired for 2.5 gigabit. In fact, I ran 2 cables to my office so I can add a switch or another computer in my office if I want to and not be limited by just 1 cable. I didn't show you because it was getting late, it was difficult to film in the attic and underneath my desk. So let me show you how I did it running a cable for this access point in the living room. Let's get to it. So I want the access point to be fairly central to this portion of the house. As such, I'm gonna put it on the wall right up here, as it's in the middle between the seating area where the camera is and this that's going to become our reading nook, little library space. I think it was meant to be a dining area. We're not gonna use it for that. Side note, this house is ridiculous. We had to get a bigger McMansion to get a bigger garage for me to have for the studio space. It's more space than we need, it's more room than we need, and I think we need to fill it up with some fun, big 3D print projects, so let me know in the comments what you think we should do. I'm certain a low voltage tech would have a better method than what I'm about to demonstrate for you, but this method works perfectly fine for me, and I don't hate the results of it. So I break out my favorite layout tool once again, masking tape. I know there's a stud in here somewhere, so I'm going to use the stud finder to locate the edge of it so I can know to avoid it. I don't want to hit the stud, I actually want to be away from it, and that's why I need to mark its location. I do want to fall in the center of this trim section though, just for the way it looks. I don't want to be like this outlet on the other side of the room that drives me nuts when I see it down in that lower right corner. I headed to Lowe's and grabbed a couple of these low voltage 1-gang electrical flanges. These are perfectly fine for this type of application. I can put them into the wall and those wings will grab onto the back side of the drywall after I cut an opening for it with my plunge saw here. Then I'm ready to break out the installation helper, my 54-inch flex install bit. This will allow me to flex inside of the wall and get a straighter shot down through the bottom plate and the subfloor into the crawl space. Once my bit is through the floor, I can remove the drill and there's a small hole in the back end of it where I can tie some twine through to follow down through the hole with the bit. Down here in the basement, I just need to locate where the big bit is sticking through the floor. And then I've got a pull cord with that twine that I can use to pull the cable back up through the hole. So if all I wanted to do was run a hardwired connection, I've already created the setup that I need here. I've pulled the cable up through that hole and I would just terminate this to a keystone jack that I could then mount into that flange that I got and be done. That's how the 2 lines that I ran to my office are done and my computer is wired back to the switch. But because I want an access point higher up on the wall, well, this hole that I cut in here and pulling the cable up was just about access. I'm actually gonna end up putting a flat plate over that when I'm done. What I need to do here is bring the ladder in again. Then I just need to locate where the access point's gonna be. I'm gonna use the mounting flange that it mounts to locate and use as a template on the wall for drilling my holes, for the cable, and the drywall anchors that I'm going to use. Then I can feed a fish, a traditional wire metal fish, down through the wall to get down to that hole that we have already punched in and pulled the cable up from. Like I said, this is probably where a low voltage installer might not have to cut in that access hole that I did. They might be able to fish from all the way up here, down through the floor. I don't know. For me, that's just way too difficult to make happen, and this is significantly easier.
I've got a pretty big problem here.
Ugh. As I tried to fish down from the top down to here to pull the cable up, somewhere right around here, I hit something. The stairs are on the other side of this, so I'm betting there's blocking in between the studs that they could nail the landing for the steps to.
Either that or it's meant to function as a fire break so that fire can't go up through the wall. Seems like they were quite cautious when they built this place, because I actually had an issue in my office where a few feet down from the top there was a block in there, and I had to, luckily I was able to use the long bit, flexible bit, get down in there and drill a hole in it, and then use that to send the wire down through. I can't do that here because I'd have to punch a hole in the top. As I see it, I have two options how I can move forward here. I can cut another hole in for another blank plate, punch through that thing, and then just feed the wire through with the fish. I'll have to have two holes so I can access everything, and then I have two holes in line with each other in the wall. Not a good look. I can paint them the same color as the wall, and they'll blend in a little bit, and we intend to make this a library area, so bookshelves may end up in front of it. But I do have another option. Underneath of these steps is quite a bit of space that's just wasted. It could have been storage, it could have been Harry Potter's bedroom, but they boarded it up and left it. I can see that through the hole that I created already. What I could do is cut an access hole, probably in our pantry, make a little door so I can get in and out of there, and then I can do what I need to do from inside of there, and my life is going to be significantly easier. And then we could possibly use it as storage. I have to check with Ruby about what she wants me to do, because adding another hole out here or cutting an access hole in from inside of the pantry, I don't know what the right call is.
After explaining the issue to Ruby, approval was given to go with whatever was the easiest route, in this case, punching another hole in the wall. It probably helped the partner approval factor that it was 10 p.m. on my birthday when this problem arose. So I think I got a little skewed permission on that one. You can see the offending block that I had to then drill another hole through so I could feed the cable up through. With that second access hole, this was a really simple process, as simple as it should have been the first go around. Just that additional bridging, whoever was trying to be good, made my life difficult in the end. And don't worry, I couldn't possibly complete a project like this without some 3D printing. I unboxed and set up the Prusa Mark IV in the office and printed off a handful of these cable clamps I designed forever ago for this specific Cat7 cable that I have a bulk supply of. I used it to tie it up to the ceiling away from the power cables as best as I could. If I crossed cables, I tried to do it as close to a 90 as I can. This is to reduce interference. This is shielded cable, but it's still the best practice to do this, so I did as best I could. This project and video has run a lot longer than I expected, but I do want to still quickly touch on some key points. UnifiOS. I adore that operating system and its way of interfacing with my network. I can quickly jump in and see a full map of what devices are connected to what access points or what switches. And for new 3D printers, when I'm hooked them up to my network, this is excellent for finding the IP address of them quickly. I can also lock them to a specific access point so they only connect to the one that I want them to connect to. And I can set a fixed IP address with just a quick check of a checkbox. So I don't have to worry about them jumping around on me and not being able to access them easily from SSH or web interface. Simply put, UnifiOS makes me the network admin that I am not. It makes this all easy for me, and that is what I need. But let's talk about this 24-port Pro Max switch, because so far, it's right up my alley. Why? Because RGB. They call this ether lighting. A lot of folks think this is a gimmick, that the ports on this thing can light up different colors, and in some ways I see that point. But I love that at a glance I can quickly look at these. Right now they're set up to display the connection speed of each of these ports. If it's blue, it's 2.5 gigabit. If it's white, it's 1 gigabit. And if it's yellow, it's having a connection issue at the moment. That's because my entire network is not fully set up. My NAS boxes are hooked up to the switch, but they're not turned on at the moment. It can also be configured to do other things, such as display what ports are connected to what VLANs. I do intend to break down my network into different segments, so smart home devices and 3D printers are separated from our computers or our phones. I'm glad they sent over a bunch of the ether lighting patch cables so I'm getting the full lighting effect, and was able to get this really nicely set up. Sometimes it's really difficult to talk about something you're really enthusiastic about and not sound like an ad.
Yes, Ubiquiti did provide that new switch and the access points, as well as some cameras we'll talk about in a second. But I have purchased Ubiquiti hardware myself. The Dream Machine, the UCI, those are mine that I bought. And I genuinely really like Ubiquiti hardware for my network needs. Once I got to the point where I had a lot of Raspberry Pis, 3D printers, various devices connected all the time, I was running into constant connectivity issues, and switching to Ubiquiti solved them. This install is by no means complete. I mean, right now the U7 Pro for the studio is just sitting on top of the rack. The cables coming down from the duct are in sleeving now, which does look a lot nicer, but the server rack's gonna move over closer to that duct soon. If you have thoughts on ways that I can improve this install and my entire setup going on here, please let me know in the comments. Now, about the security cameras. Ubiquiti did send over 3 of their security cameras from their Protect line. I had every intention of installing at least one of these in this video to demonstrate that setup, but I decided against it. 1, this video's run a lot longer than I expected it to. 2, it's not really the greatest security move to show people where I'm installing security cameras. Sure, they won't be hard to find if you're actually seeing them from the outside of the house, but I just decided against doing it. For now, I can close the door on this one, and we can move on to building out this studio into something cool. Thank you again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video, Ubiquiti for providing hardware so this can all come together, and you folks for being here watching this. I wasn't sure if folks would be too interested in this, but I had a lot of interest in comments when I posted some pictures of the hardware that was sent over, so hopefully you enjoyed this one. Alright folks, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I got to get back to work on the studio build out. I hope you found this video interesting. I got a lot more stuff coming from building out the studio, and my office space is going to be its own dedicated build series too. So let me know in the comments what you might like to see among the projects that are going to be coming, and if you have suggestions for what I could do to make this a better workshop. Be sure to get subscribed to ensure your 3D prints don't fail. It's not a guarantee, but it can't hurt. See you folks. Crawl space sucks to get out of. The ladder's like inset. It's really annoying.